Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Today, we are in the second in a series of lessons based on a really wonderful Unity classic that I know some of you have said you weren't familiar with, but this is Eric Butterworth is probably one of the most well-known and loved Unity ministers and teachers, and he wrote this wonderful book called The Concentric Perspective. Concentric Perspective, and so we're actually in the second part of a series on that, and I came across a story that really spoke to me about our lesson for today. And there was a doctor that died and was sitting at the gates of heaven, in the waiting area, right? The waiting space, and so he's waiting for things to open up, and so he could finally get in to see God. And while he was waiting, a guy in a white coat kept running. He ran out of heaven, and then a few minutes later, the guy saw him walk back in and didn't even wait. Didn't have to wait on anything. Didn't have to wait in the waiting room, and the doctor was kind of upset about that. He said to the gatekeeper, he said, how come this guy gets to just go in and out whenever he wants to, and I'm sitting there having to wait? And the gatekeeper says, oh, well, that guy, that's God. He just likes to play doctor. But well, I thought about that, and what came to me is that, God, believe it or not, likes to play you. God likes to play you. The reality is the concentric perspective is a shift in understanding, a shift in awareness, a shift in our consciousness. There was a time when almost everybody on earth believed that the earth was flat. Some of you may still, but there was a time when everybody believed that the world was flat. And then this was a comfortable theory. It was easy to live by, it seemed like, and it was safe, and it was easy to understand, and it was comfortable. Now, believing this did not make it true. But it was easier to handle, and it made life in some ways more predictable for people. And in reading accounts of the time, we learned that people got rather upset when some evidence that this was not true was being presented. It's true, isn't it? And more scientists began to say that the earth was really round. And that it actually, in contrary to the way it looked to their eyes, that it was actually spinning on its axis and floating out in this thing called space. This big sea of what seemed like nothingness. And boy, the people really kind of believed that, that all that was, it really just stirred people up. The religious people especially were really upset. That how dare you say such a thing? It was considered blasphemy. People were actually killed over teaching this idea. Do you realize that? Yeah. The Bible, of course, taught that the earth was flat. It was really obvious. They could give you verse after verse after verse. And for a long time, people began to realize that this new evidence actually really began to make God even appear even more wonderful and more powerful than ever before. And they began to actually discover that there were certain verses and passages which they had perhaps overlooked before that had supported their previous belief system, but they kind of overlooked it because they didn't understand it. Do you realize that? This is part of our unfolding history, whether we realize it or not. They began to discover that there were verses and teachings and ideas and understandings, and they could see how this old viewpoint could be fitted within a context of this new truth that was appearing to them. And they began to evolve into a different way of understanding that perhaps the earth isn't flat. It's a novel idea. Maybe some of you still are wrestling with this. I'm not sure. It's possible. I know that there are people in this world that still very much, believe it or not, there's a flat earth society. Do you realize that? And it's still active, apparently. So, whether we realize it or not, we're actually kind of going through a similar experience in these times. There's an awakening awareness of our oneness and an understanding of God not as a being out there, but as a presence and a power within our very nature and our being. And there are those today that will say that's blasphemy. But you can see verse after verse that talks about and says the presence of God is within. It's in the midst of you. We sang that this morning. The presence is in the midst. And Eric Butterworth, in his powerful work, calls this the concentric perspective. It is a shift in understanding to recognize that God is not just some being out there, but that God exists within the very nature of each and every one of us. And our spirituality and our spiritual growth is really about opening up to and awakening to that great possibility of seeing life and experiencing life more from that perception and that perspective. And it is a shift in way of seeing, isn't it? It's a shift in our perception. It's a shift in our way of looking not only at life, but looking at ourselves even for that matter. Sometimes that's the most difficult part, it seems, is being able to recognize that that is a part of who and what we are, that we are spiritual beings, that we are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine, and we are actually an essence of the divine manifesting and expressing out in the world. A lot of times people have challenge with that. You ever notice that? Yeah. You know, the focus of my ministry is really something that Jesus said. He said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And we came into this world to experience all of the good that God is and has in store for us, and to express all of the potential and the possibilities that God created us to experience and express. And the Bible tells us that it's God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And this tells me, it means that we are meant to know and experience the fullness of God's presence in life and love, and as life and love and wisdom, as abundance, as peace, and as power. And do you realize that divine intelligence and substance is trying right now, knocking at the door of our consciousness to bless us, every one of us, with unlimited life, with health, with abundance, with wisdom, with peace, and with power. These human hearts that we have are amazing, amazing things. And there's one word that defines the function of the heart, and that word is flow. If there's no flow in and with and through the heart, there's no life, right? And so part of our awakening is to really recognize that we are awakening to an understanding of the flow, not only of the blood flowing through the heart, but of the divine flowing through us. And that's really at the very essence of our nature. See, we're growing through life, and our spiritual path as we go through lots of different experiences is to wake up to this really beautiful awareness. You know, sometimes we're going along in life and we're experiencing the blessings of Spirit. Things are going well in life, and all of a sudden we have some kind of an experience. And that experience in some way makes us feel stressed and challenged, and oftentimes feel stuck. Anybody ever feel stuck? Anybody ever feel stressed? Anybody? Maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, and maybe you need to get up here and do the lesson and show me how you do that. Because I can assure you, I go through experiences of feeling stuck and stressed, and, you know, it seems like at times we can't just move ahead. We can't seem to keep moving in the way that is feels like it's life-enhancing for us. It's a blessing for us. We can't make that demonstration that we've been wanting to experience and make in our life in some way, or we haven't really experienced that a blessing in a way that we thought we should experience it. We reach some plateau in life where things are maybe going along okay, but it just feels like we're not quite where we want to be or think we should be. Ever have kind of thoughts like that? Yeah. Or we're in a difficult place. There are probably people here today that feel and know that they're in some way in a difficult place. And so I want you to know that my heart and my compassion is with you. Sometimes we find that we keep repeating the same patterns over and over again and over again and over again and over again. Know the ones I'm talking about? Ones, especially the ones that we thought we had let go of and cleared. Remember, there they are again. Yeah. Back in our life, back in our experience. There's a wonderful poem by J. Sig Paulman, who was the Unity minister down in Houston for many, many years, and a great Unity author and teacher. And it goes like this: the universe is one, so complicated and yet so intricately done, that a song in the heart and a smile on the face tickles the atoms of outermost space. I always love that one. And it just talks to me about the connection of all of our experiences and all of life and all of the universe. And so the universe operates in circles. Do you realize that? And you can look throughout nature. It operates in circles and in spirals. And everything that goes on in life in some way goes on again. But it goes on perhaps in a different way, in a different level. And we experience it on a different level. It's more of a spiral. We never really go through the same experience again the same way. There's always a little different awareness and understanding. There's always a little different viewpoint. And that's what I call grace, to be honest. We come back to the same stuff, but we're not in the same place, believe it or not. And that is a powerful grace that we have, is that we can see things from a different perception. We can look at our life experiences in a different way. We can be in a place where we are holding an understanding of what's going on more from an awareness of our part in what's going on than from a place of being a helpless victim of what's going on. Make sense? So oftentimes when we feel like that things are not going the way, that we're not in that flow, that we're not experiencing things in the way that we feel are a blessing for us, I'm going to have to move back again. I'm getting a little feedback. Like that. So you get feedback in life, don't we? Sometimes when things are not the way we think they ought to be, we have to back up a little bit, right? And get really back-centered. What a great, thank you, God. Oh my goodness, I get tickled about those things. That just thrills me. You know, when we feel like we're in a place where we're not in that flow, we oftentimes get this idea or thought that somehow the flow has stopped coming to us or coming through us, and that somehow we have to get back in the flow, and the way to get back in the flow is to get something. Because we think that somehow something is missing, right? And that's a natural and normal way of thinking about things in life, in our world. It's kind of one of the biggest challenges that we face, though, is that a belief system that says somehow that there's something out here that we have to get in order to be in that place of blessing. And it's a way of thinking that keeps us stuck. It's a way of thinking that causes us stress. Do you realize that? It's one of the primary ways that we get stressed about things, because the world is not showing up the way that we think it's supposed to. Sometimes the world just doesn't flow the way we think it's supposed to flow. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And the moment we get stuck in that kind of idea that the world is not the way that we think it's supposed to be, that we are actually thinking like there's a stovepipe that's supposed to be coming into us and through our consciousness in some way, and we think that the stovepipe has actually been turned off up here, and it's not flowing in. But the reality is the stovepipe of God's blessing, isn't that a great image? Stovepipe of God's blessing. The stovepipe is actually cut off here. It's blocked going out. And if that flow is not going out, I can assure you there's nothing else coming in. There's no place for it. It's not a part of the flow. So it's not that the blessings of Spirit of the universe are ever stopped coming into us. The reality is it can't help but be there. And it's always there as possibility. It's always there as potential. But the only way to open that flow is not to try and get something to come into us, but to allow something to flow out through us. Eric says that basically life is a giving process. And if we're not coming from that understanding and awareness, and we're going through life with an attitude, an idea, a belief system that says, I have to get something in order to feel loved, happy, healthy, prosperous, then we're missing the mark. We've turned the creative process upside down. In a very real sense, what needs to happen is to unblock the flow. You see, we get stuck in that kind of thinking. We get stuck thinking that we have to get. And the place the flow stops is coming from within us. I came across an idea a while back, and I'm trying to remember who it was. The name of the person, Kristen Howell, got something from her not long ago, and she says when we're stuck, there's three things that are going on. When we get stuck, we get into the three C's. We talked about this in the board meeting a little bit. We get into the three C's. The first one is we complain. The first thing that we do when we're stressed and things are not going the way we want, what do? We complain, right? Well, yeah, you gotta make sure everybody knows. You gotta really make sure that everybody knows that this isn't the way I want it. But the reality is, the moment that you're complaining, what you're actually doing is putting your energy into what you don't want. So a complaint in and of itself is part of the problem. It's part of the problem in our consciousness and thinking. When you're putting your energy toward what you don't want, you're putting creative energy toward what you don't want, and the universe says, oh, you want more of that. It's kind of, you think it's crazy, but it's not. That's the way it works. Where energy goes, where attention goes, energy flows, right? So when we're putting our energy on what we don't want, we're actually feeding it. So that's the first thing we do. We complain. The second thing we do is that we tend to cut off. We tend to withdraw. We tend to pull back. We tend to isolate. We tend to forget, not only forget our connection, but we actually believe that we don't have any connection. We believe that we don't have any connection with our source. We believe we don't have any connection with everyone. We believe that we're separate. And we believe that the only way to really have our blessing is for everyone out there to change the way we think they're supposed to be, right? And so we cut ourselves off from people who don't do that. We do. We cut ourselves off. And then the third thing that we do is we have a tendency to constrict and conserve. Now you may think, well, that's a good thing. Well, not if you want to be in the flow. If you want to be in the flow, you don't constrict and conserve. You don't constrict and conserve your light. You don't put it under a bushel, Jesus said. You don't hide your light under a bushel. Your light is that divine essence of light, of love, of joy, of peace. And if you want to experience more of that, you need to be in the energy, in the flow of sending it out. Don't hide your light under a bushel, Jesus said. Don't hide our light under a bushel. So those are the three C's. So when we get stuck, there's this little phrase that Eric has in this wonderful next couple of chapters that really spoke to me. It's spoken to me actually for a number of years, and I keep remembering it, and I keep forgetting it. Yeah. But when I find myself in a challenging and difficult place, when I find myself confronted with stress, when I find myself feeling out of sorts or stuck, occasionally when I'm in my meditation, I'll hear this phrase. And you may want to write this one down, but I suggest you write it on your heart. And the phrase is, something has to give. I say it this way, something's got to give. Something's got to give. And the something that's got to give, we have a tendency to think is something or someone out there. or something up there that has to give. And that something up there is not something up there. That something is within here. And it already has given. It already is that very thing that we're thinking that we need. It already is the love. It already is the peace. It already is the abundance. He, she, it, whatever pronoun we want to use for the divine is that which we desire, that which we seek. And we don't get it, we express it. And if we don't express it, we're not getting it. Do you understand what I mean? So if we focus our intentions and our desires toward trying to get that, we're missing something. We're missing the boat. We're missing the mark, as they say. We're missing the mark. And the idea is to shift our consciousness and to ask that question, what is it within me that I need to express? What needs to be expressed through me? What is it that the universe, the spirit, the divine is trying to express through me? And when we get stuck in a place, we often focus on thoughts and energies of trying to get that universe to give us. And I'm going to suggest to you that that really keeps us stuck. And we need to shift. And we need to move into what Eric, he doesn't list it out this way, he lists them separately, but I came up there, 5 ways that we need to give. You want to hear 5 ways that we can move back into the flow? Does that sound valuable to you? Okay. Well, the first giving is give thanks. Always and in everything, Paul says, give thanks. Always and in everything. Boy, that's sometimes a challenge, isn't it? Sometimes a challenge because we really do like the complaining part. And when we're finding ourselves stressed and challenged and stuck in some way, there's automatically a desire to try and break free, to get unstuck, and we think that something out there has to change in order for that to happen. But the reality is there simply needs to be a change in our energy flow. And another phrase that he uses in here is a great phrase to remember, and ask this question when you find yourself in a circumstance or situation where you don't like it, it's painful, it doesn't work for you. Ask yourself the question, what's in this from me? What am I expressing in this? How am I expressing in this? What's the way that I'm showing up that's attracting this kind of experience? That's helping me to tune into whatever that challenge or difficulty is and see it from that perception and that perspective. What's in this from me? That's a concentric perspective. That's seeing the world from the inside out. And that's the way the world works. It works from the inside out. We think it's the other way around. We really do. We think that the outside is what's causing all of our upset. We think that out here in the world, and then when things are not the way we think they're supposed to be, when the politicians are not saying and doing and being the way we want them to be, that's causing all of our upset. Believe me, I've been through that. But the truth is, there's something within me that is being called forth. Now, I don't know what that might be in you. There's some way that you are being called forth to give in all of the circumstances in life. So giving thanks is one of the most important and most powerful causative energies that we can tune into. In the very act of focusing our awareness on the good, we are actually helping to create more of that good in our lives. So when we find ourselves challenged by something, one of the most valuable things we can do is begin to move back into the energy of gratitude and begin to give thanks for even the small things, but yes, even give thanks, Paul said, always and in everything. You mean we give thanks for our problems? We give thanks for our problems? Interestingly enough, if we're open to giving thanks even for our problems, it can help shift our awareness in such a way that we begin to shift through the problems. If we can begin to see that even those things that we consider problems, in some way there's something there trying to be poured in and through us. Now, I'm not going to say this is easy. Don't get me wrong, folks. This is probably this is some of the highest teachings, I think, in some ways, is being able to shift that energy and that attitude. The second way that we have to give is we have to give up. Now, we don't like that one. When I say give up, it sounds like, oh, I'm defeated. But you kind of have to ask the question, who's the I'm that's saying that? You follow me? Who's the I that is saying that? But when I talk about giving up, I'm really talking about giving up symbolically. If we still think of the divine as being up, then certainly we want to give to the divine. We want to give up. We want to give up in terms of energy. We want to let our energy move upward. We need to give. We need to let go, of course. We need to unpack our bags, as Susan and Katie is saying for us this morning. We've got to be willing to unpack some of this baggage that's going on in us. But we kind of like all that baggage sometimes. We have to be willing to let go of the attachments as well, right? That's a giving up. The giving up we're talking about is letting go of those things that are keeping us in that place. And the things that are keeping us in that place is the way we're looking and seeing it, right? We have to be willing to shift the focus of our attention and shift our awareness and shift our attachments to having it be the way we think it's supposed to be so that it can be even better than we imagined it. Because the universe has a way of expressing that's even better than we've been able to imagine even at this point. So that's another way we have to give. We have to give way. When I want some good, I define exactly what that good is, and I become really attached to that particular manifestation of that good. I tell a story about Noah and the ark, and Noah was on the ark, and he was, it would rain 40 days and 40 nights. The rain had stopped, and he was out on the deck of the ark, and he sent out doves to see if he could find land. And the land, the dove came back and had an olive branch in its mouth. And Noah took the olive branch and looked at it and threw it down, stomped on it, and said, "That's not land." And how often do we have amazing little symbols, little signs of what it is that we're wanting and desiring in life, and we dismiss them because they're not exactly what we thought we wanted. We become attached to the view of the form of how our good is going to come, and we forget what it is that we're really wanting, and that is the good that represents for us. So we have to give way. We have to be willing to be open and allowing and understanding the difference between having a desire and having an attachment. I've talked about this before, but attachment is really a fear of not having what you want. And interestingly enough, when you have a fear of not having what you want, you've got this push me, pull me energy. You have the desire, but you're afraid you're not going to get it, so you're actually pushing it away. That's an attachment. So we have to be willing to be like the traveling vacuum cleaner salesman, the enlightened vacuum cleaner salesman, and give up our attachments. Ba-dum-bum. Yeah. But the other way we have to give, moving on, is we have to give of. We have to give of. Not giving, in some way, if I'm not giving myself in some way, that keeps me stuck. And when I say self, I'm talking about my time, my energy, my attention, yes, my finances, my joy, my love. If I'm not giving peace to a situation, then I'm a part of the problem. Do you realize that? If I'm not moving into that place and being the peace I wish to see in the world, then I'm a part of the problem. And that blocks my flow, but it also blocks the flow out into the world. So I came across David Roth. Some of you may be familiar with the musician David Roth. Beautiful musician, beautiful spiritual musician. Here's a couple lines from a song that I really like of his. Hiding your heart is a fool's game to play, and so is gathering love just to lock it away. What you have in your heart wasn't put there to stay. It's not love till you give it away. I love that. Very, very powerful. And then the fifth way we want to forgive, and this is one of the higher teachings, I think, of spiritual teachings, of all spiritual teachings, really, and that is the forgiving. Forgiving. So when I'm stuck, I can guarantee that I have been holding on to some resentment, some grudge, and there's something in me that I haven't released. I have a wound, perhaps, that I haven't healed. And to give, Emily Cady says, forgive means to give for. And that means you give something in place of. One of my favorite sayings about forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better yesterday. Giving up all hope of a better yesterday. We keep trying to get yesterday to be the way that we think it's supposed to be. Right? And Gandhi once said, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And so we hold on to our wounds and resentments because somehow our ego thinks that it will somehow protect us from having those experiences happen to us again. If I hold on to this grudge, then that means that that won't happen to me again. I'll be ready for it, and that won't happen to me again. How well is that working for you, as they say? The reality is you're holding that energy, and because you're holding that energy, you're actually attracting experiences like that again. Thoughts held in mind, in consciousness, are produced after their kind. And so unless we are doing the work to really let go of those hurts and those wounds, those disappointments, whatever they might be, then we are actually participating in helping to draw even more of that. Josh Billings says, there's no revenge so complete as forgiveness. Ba-dum-bum. Yeah, it's the truth. And so we know that what we give out, we get back. And so if you think that you're through, this is a great quote from Edwin Gaines, if you think that you're through forgiving, if you're still in a body, you're not. Peter said to Jesus, how many times shall my brother sin against me and I forgive? And Jesus replied, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. He's basically saying this is a process, folks, and it's an ongoing process. 7 is a symbol for completion. You just keep doing it until you really don't need to anymore. And recently, I've come across a teaching from one of my coaches that there are basically 4 levels of forgiveness, and I think actually there's 5. So I'm going to give you 5 levels of forgiveness here. First of all, forgiving others, and that's really generally more of our thoughts. We have to forgive others, but we have a tendency to do that pretty much in terms of our thinking, which is good. It's an important thing. We have to be willing to shift our thinking about others. And then we also have to release the blocked emotions from our body and nervous system. That's another level of forgiveness, and that's one of the things that we do in our meditation times, and do our tapping work, to do the releasing work, and in yoga. There are different ways of doing that, but we have to be willing to let it go not only from our thinking, but all the way into our system. If we find ourselves saying, I forgive this person, but then you think about them and you find yourself feeling that little something right in here, or you feel something right in here, or you feel something back here, you can bet you haven't forgiven yet, because it's still there in your energy system. You follow me? If you can think about that person and you don't feel that constriction in any way in your physical form, then there's a good chance you've let that part go. And that's a good thing. And if you haven't, you want to do whatever work is needed, whatever form you take that takes for you to be able to let that go. We have to forgive ourselves. That's really one of the most valuable things, one of the things that keeps us stuck the most, is we have a tendency to not forgive ourselves in circumstances. We put the blame on others, but we don't recognize that there's something going on from within us, and we're not acknowledging that, and we're not letting it go. So we do have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive our shadow. Our shadow. That's that unconscious part of ourselves that we really don't like very much and we think is wrong and bad and horrible, that everybody else gets to wear. It's what we project out onto all of them. You follow me? And as we're not doing the work to release that and forgive that and heal and forgive that part of ourselves, then we haven't completely forgiven. We're still holding on to those energies. So, and then this is a teaching that really I think is so powerful from Richard Bach's Illusions in the Messiah's Handbook. How many of you read that book? One of my favorite books. If you haven't read that, highly recommend it. It says, you're never given a problem without a gift for you in its hand. You seek problems because you need their gifts. Let me say it again. You are never given a problem without a gift for you in its hand. You seek problems because you need their gifts. So we know that we've forgiven when we've been able to actually receive the gift of whatever that experience is. When you can actually say thank you for whatever that has been for you, then you know you've completed your forgiveness. And it requires getting to that place, I think, to really truly have completed it. So life is a giving process from the within to the without, and stress is where we have blocked the flow of this giving in some way. And so when you find yourself in this place, always remember this understanding, this idea. Something's got to give. And recognize that the one that has to do that is you. Because you're the common denominator in every problem that you've ever had. All right, let's move into our meditation time. Just allow yourself to breathe in and out. And with each breath, feel a sense of relaxation and peace flowing from the very heart of being into your heart, into your mind, into your body, and out into your life. Allowing that flow to move through in such a way that you are given the insight and awareness that is yours to share and to give in all the experiences of your life. If you find yourself stuck or stressed or blocked in some way, breathe into that heart space and listen. Ask that question, what is mine to give? What is mine to give? What am I being called to express? And take a moment now in the quiet of your being to just listen to the answers in the stillness and in the silence. And now breathing in and breathing out, let your heart be filled with a feeling and energy of gratitude, knowing that an awareness is available, and if you are not seeing it or experiencing it right now, it is actually coming to you in just the right and perfect way at the perfect time. Breathing in and out, know that you are a part of that amazing and wonderful flow of the divine. And just allow a trusting and a knowing that that is so, and that you will be given and you will give, and that as you give, you receive. Just the right and perfect way, in the perfect time. Thank you. Thank you, Blessed Spirit. Breathe that in and out and begin to stretch a little bit. Let your awareness be in this room, this time, this place. And give thanks for that assurance. And so it is. Gently let your eyes come open. Be here and now. And so it is. Thank you, God.